Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Lazy Entrepreneur. We're your hosts, Sam and Emma Priestley.
Hello.
Today, Emma, I've got a historical subject for you. I'm going to tell you the story of a business that I started long before I met you that I don't think you know anything about. I don't think I've ever spoken about it to you before.
Sounds very ominous.
It's not ominous at all. In fact, it is a very classic type of business, one that's very easy to understand, and it kind of makes sense why we did it. And that is that we decided to buy used cars here in the UK, import them into Malta, which is a European country, and sell them.
Wow. That's not very online.
Nothing online about it at all. It's one of these ones where
You saw an opportunity.
you saw an opportunity. So we went on holiday to Malta. My friend who's really into his cars, Toby, was wandering around and said, these cars are really expensive here. And I was like, oh yeah. And he says, oh yeah, they're much cheaper back in the UK. But they're basically the same cars because they drive on the same side of the road as us, which is unusual. And so we were like, I wonder if there's an opportunity here to make some money importing cars. And being me, I decided to look into it and work it out. We spoke to a Maltese accountant who kind of gave us the lowdown and told us, all the costs that would be involved in the cost of importing and getting an MOT out there and the road tax and that sort of thing. We spoke to some freight forwarders, some transportation companies to work out how exactly you get a car from the UK to Malta. We just did a bit of research, really.
This all sounds very sensible.
Can you believe it? Well,
No,
it's
I
a simple
can't.
business. You see an opportunity. Does the opportunity really exist? And really, in this case, it kind of existed. So the reason cars are so expensive is kind of all cars are imported. So there's already that threshold of cost. And the import duty they charge on imported cars is very expensive. But it's also a bit weird. So some cars are very cheap to import. The import duty is very low, and some are really expensive. And a lot of it's down to whether they're good for the environment. So the sort of pollution aspects of the car. So basically you get two cars which are basically exactly the same. So like whatever, the 1.9 litre versus the 2.1 litre engine.
Yeah.
And one will cost €1,000 to import, the import duty, and one will cost 8,000.
Wow.
And so the market doesn't quite reflect that.
Yeah.
People just kind of import whatever cars they want. And so there was this kind of weird opportunity where we saw there were some cars we could import and make what we thought was quite a good bit of money.
Sounds good. It also sounds quite crazy.
Yeah, it's a bit ridiculous, isn't it? I remember, so this was 2011. So this was 8 years ago. How old would I be doing? I would have been 21,
Just
22.
finish uni.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Just finish your
literally
masters.
just finished university.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. Had you done any other businesses before this?
We're still doing all the gambling stuff.
But that's very different from
Very
importing cars.
You can read about, so I got an episode on professional gambling, which is where I started earning my money. But this is probably the first real business that we did.
Physical business.
First physical business we did. And it was a real business. So in order to import cars into Malta, we had to set up a Maltese registered company. So we spoke to an accountant who did that for us. That cost €600 to get that all set up.
Wow.
So not that expensive really when you think about it. And then we went for it. We decided to trial with one car to begin with, and then the idea is we would scale up.
Sounds sensible.
Sounds sensible. What would you think? Well, obviously I'm not still doing it now. So do you think this business worked out?
Well, it just sounds crazy.
So why does this sound? Yeah, this is what I was wondering, because it does sound crazy. But why is it crazy to start an import-export car business?
I think a part of it is the size of a car. I think it's like the visual of you and Toby finding these cars in England, putting them on some sort of like ship, and then being the other side, like being in Malta to like greet them. Like it's a very silly image in my head.
Yeah.
And why is that so different from you doing table tennis bats?
Yeah, and why do you assume we would have had to be there to buy the car? And why do you assume we'd have to be there to pick it up?
I think there's something about a car and it being very like an old school business, old school world. You need to be there to negotiate the deal. It's all about building relationships face to face. That's how I see it. It's quite wheeler-dealery.
And I think that is one of the problems we run into.
Yeah.
So let me give you a spoiler to how this story ends. It was a successful business. We made about 10,000 euros out of it, and then decided to not do it anymore. The kind of hassle around it wasn't really worth it. But it was something that we thought did have legs, and if we really worked at it, could have become a really successful business. But it was just a bit of a nightmare. And the nightmares of what I'm going to talk about here. And most of the nightmares were more due to the different culture of buyers in Malta and the way they do business there than how we do business here in the UK. Oh,
that's interesting. That's not what I would have assumed.
Actually, all the stuff you're talking about, us having to pick up the car, we found someone, company, for €1,000. They would go to the dealer, pick up the car and take it all the way and deliver it to the customer in Malta. And we kind of had this idea that we would have relationships with dealers here in the UK who we could buy cars sight unseen, and dealers in Malta who would buy cars from us sight unseen, and we'd just be doing this middleman type thing. They say to us in Malta, can you source us this car for this amount of money? And we would say, we'll look into it, and then we'd go and find a dealer who had that car, and then just basically take a commission on the difference.
Yeah, sounds good.
Costs. So that's one aspect we attempted. And the other aspect we obviously attempted was trying to sell direct to customers. So, let's dive in. One thing we thought is that we really needed someone in Malta. So we had a friend who had a history of working for car dealers in the UK, who had just split up with his girlfriend and was looking for a change in life. So he said to him, why don't you start this business with us? You can do 50%, we'll put up all the money and kind of thing and run it from here in the UK, and you can move to Malta and run it from there. A guy's called Rick, and that's exactly what he did. We found a car where we thought we were getting a good deal here in the UK. We checked, obviously, so there's a website in Malta where you can check how much the import duty would be. Talked to our accountant, he told us how much the VAT would be. So I've got all the numbers here. Not that it's that interesting. But whatever it was. I think it was about €300 for this and that. It was the shipping was €1,000. The import duty was probably another €1,000. So that's what we did. We took out this little car and got it there and then started trying to sell it.
How did it go?
And that's kind of where it sat for a while. It took us about 2.5 months to sell it in the end.
What? Why?
That is a good question. Why did it take us that long? And the same thing happened for the next car as well. So that car was a BMW 1 Series, and the next one was a Mini Cooper, both of which we tried to sell direct to retail to customers.
And quite nice sounding cars. I don't know anything about cars, but they sound like the kind of car you'd want to buy.
Very nice. They're the type of car I'd like to have. And so we created a website. I paid a web developer £250 on, it was called Odes back in the day, now it's called Upwork, to make a nice website for us. We were called Imports Malta or something like that.
Classic.
Or Imports MT, I think it was.
MT.
It was a bit lame. We had our little company registered out there, and we were trying to sell them. And one of the problems we found was that people in Malta really like to swap things.
Wow.
And generally, they don't buy stuff outright. They have laws over there about buying stuff on credit, that basically loans with interest are illegal.
That's really interesting.
So, or they were at the time.
So people aren't buying new cars?
So they can't buy a new car, and the only way they can buy a new car is by swapping something. So, you're like this. One person offered us, we'll take 2 cars off us in exchange for a house.
What?
What?
Are they serious?
Yeah, it's quite common that people will, let's say you inherit an apartment, you want a new car.
Were you interested in it? What was the house like?
I can't remember.
I mean, it sounds like you were in a silly enough position.
I feel like we considered it.
Yeah, I feel like you probably did.
Yeah. Well,
this is getting weirder and weirder.
It's a weird story. So we're off at the houses. Eventually, So I think the Mini Cooper we swapped for a BMW Z4, which is like a much nicer car. And that we then swapped for something else. We swapped that for a convertible Peugeot with some extra bit of money on top of that.
What?
And this is the problem we had. We just kept on flipping these cars,
With no
taking
money.
a little bit of money each time, because the sort of people buying these used cars they just don't have the cash to buy them outright.
Had you not done any research into the consumers in Malta and how they bought cars?
No.
You just looked at the price.
No,
And that was it.
I didn't do anything on that side. So we had this thing where we just kept swapping cars, and it took us ages. The second car took us 7 months to sell, to go from importing it into the country to getting the money from that final swap.
Wow.
And finally getting a sale, someone who pay
Wow.
us actual cash for it, which is quite a funny place to be in. And like, what do you do with all these cars? So at one point we looked into renting a garage. We found a 12-car garage for about €500 a month. We thought maybe once we scale up, we'll get that. But for the time being, we just parked on the side of the road somewhere in Malta.
What?
Rick had a Maltese phone number, so if someone saw us on Auto Trader Malta or on our website, they could phone him up. He'd take the car to them, or they'd come to him, show around.
Hilarious.
We went on holiday a few times to Malta and whiz around in our convertibles. All quite fun, really, but
It's
as you
so
say,
silly.
a bit silly. But it's a sort of business which could have turned into something really big. Something I forgot to say was that the first car we imported, we were told it's going to cost this much to import it. It arrived in Malta, got to customs, and just sat there.
Oh no.
Kept like getting, what's happening? When's our car being released? I said, we haven't had time to.
Did he pay enough?
Yeah, you've guessed it. So eventually we discovered that the done thing is to give a bribe to the customs
And what are we
people.
talking in terms of money?
Good question.
Is it a huge amount, or is it like almost like an admin fee?
You know what? I have no idea how much we ended up paying.
Because if it's like €50, it's kind of like here nor there, in my opinion.
I'm just looking for when I wrote down the numbers, and I didn't even write it down, so it can't be very much.
But if you're talking like €1,000, I think
It
it's
wasn't
quite
€1,000. It was like €200 or something like
different.
that. And then, what do you know? By the end of the weekend, the car had been released.
Amazing.
And we got it. And interestingly, we never had that problem again. It was just the first time.
The initial.
And maybe it was like, now that they know us type of thing.
Yeah, that was you building a relationship with them.
That was it. And we kind of had this idea, maybe some other dealers in Malta were trying to sabotage us. But maybe not. So we had to bribe someone to get the car through customs. We had cars sitting around on the dusty streets of Malta, waiting for someone to buy it. We had kept getting swaps for stuff we didn't particularly want, but didn't really have a choice about. But it kind of worked, and I think if you're there doing it the whole time, it makes sense. And we were buying the cars kind of sight unseen here in the UK, so dealers we kind of trusted, we would get in touch with, and they would say, we got this car, we'll give you a deal on it, we're trying to get rid of it, we'd then take it and get it over to Malta. So that was the retail side. A big headache. You could make it work if you treat it as a serious business. And to be honest, if you're trying to get into starting a car dealership, what a better way to go? You don't need any high rents. You're just doing a little bit. You can park them on a street or just get a cheap garage for a little bit. The other route we took was talking to dealers out there and asking them if we can source cars for them. So for reference, with that Mini Cooper, we bought it for €10,000. The total sold price by the time we got rid of it was €20,000, and after all the costs in between, we made a little over €5,000.
Wow.
So the profits were pretty decent.
Yeah.
The BMW 1 Series was €7,800. We ended up selling it for €11,900 and made about €1,800 profit in
I
between.
guess, yeah, it sounds good, but then it's a huge amount of time and effort has gone
It's quite
into
a bit of time and
these
effort.
thousands.
But if you're scaling it up, if you're
Yeah.
doing quite a few, it does make sense. And there were good margins there. It just wasn't sort of, as you say, it wasn't an online business. It wasn't one I can do sitting in my bedroom.
No.
It was quite an old school business.
Which isn't really you.
And then the final route we took, was talking to dealers. So this is the route we wanted to do the whole time.
Yeah.
We thought we could make 500 to 1,000 euros a car, but basically have a buyer lined up before we buy it. And this took us a long time to get sorted because it's even more old school the way that people work there than here. So you go talk to a dealer and they just wouldn't want to deal with you. They wouldn't want to buy a car off you. So eventually, after building relationships with people, I remember one of them offered to swap us a watch for a car, like kind of weird stuff like that.
Wow.
Some sort of Rolex for one of the cars.
And for them, it's fair game. Like that's a legitimate.
Yeah.
But for us, obviously, that it rings alarm bells and it sounds really dodgy.
Sounds really dodgy. And a few people were like, "Yeah, we'll do it, but we'll pay you afterwards."
No.
I don't really trust you.
No.
Eventually, we found someone who wanted a BMW 5 Series and was willing to pay up front the cost of it.
Great.
So we basically sourced it, told them how much it would be, added our commission on top, and did that.
Great.
And that was a great one. It took about 3 weeks for the car to get from the dealer to him. It was all kind of done. I don't think I ever saw the car. It just went straight from them to them. We got the money up front and we made whatever it was, 750 euros off that. So I feel that this is an example of a business that we went into completely naive. We made loads of mistakes, but it still could have then translated into a proper business. And as you say, it's just a bit silly, so I thought you might like the story.
Yeah, it is a very silly story. And it's so like, you know how you say it's good to be naive going into setting up your own business. It's just like so extreme naivety. It's comical.
Like, would anyone have predicted we would be able to make it work?
No, definitely not.
Definitely not. And I think knowing me now, you'd still assume I wouldn't be able to make it work.
Definitely. And actually knowing more about Malta, definitely.
And now we know more about Malta, definitely, yeah. Extreme naivety led to... And, like, we did do research before going into it. And even if it failed, we haven't spent that much money.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's not like we've bought a dealership out there, invested in 100 cars, and then tried to sell them. We're starting one at a time.
What do you think you learned from doing this business?
That's a good question.
And what do you think you took to other businesses later on?
I think I learned that gambling is a lot easier than real life business.
Easier in a way that you don't have, it's less hassle and it guarantees you more money.
I think just at that point in time, we were making a lot of money doing something that wasn't particularly
difficult.
Taxing.
Yeah.
No, the thing I think I learned was kind of that, what you're talking about, naivety, that just go for it. Like, I wasn't burnt by this business at all.
Yeah.
Which is good, because if I'd started by, let's say, doing a coffee shop, I probably would have never started another business again, because it was so much work, so difficult to make money, and so committed by having raised a ton of money for it, and all the stress that's around that. Whereas this business was low investment. It was, even if it had failed completely, we would have lost, on that first car, we would have lost under £10,000 for everything involved, which as businesses go isn't that bad. So I think I learned, and we still would have had a car out of it. So learn a bit about that. One other thing I learned was that the people who facilitate these sort of businesses, the people transferring the car, it's in their interest to help you. And even though you're 21 years old and you're asking really stupid questions, they still want your business.
Yeah, wow.
And I've kind of learnt that that's then been true for everything else we've done. Same with the coffee shop, speaking to the people who provide the coffee, the roasters, or the people who make the coffee machines, etc. They really want to help you, and they'll give you all the advice you need and help you with every step.
Yeah, that's really good.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Another silly business, another short episode. Anything to add?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Bye.